What's up, Boutique Hotel Nation? Thanks again for tuning in for another great episode. I'm your host, Adam Walls, and on this show, we share stories, best practices, kind of chronicle our own journey, jumping from short term rentals into the whole wild world of boutique hotels. It's not me, luckily, solo on this show. I'd like to invite in my mister from another sister, Micah Thomas. Micah, how you doing today?
Doing good. I'm doing good. Yet another week filled of fun and adventure in this boutique hotel space. I swear there's
It's
not a
dull,
week
right?
that goes by. I start the week and I'm like, this is gonna be a chill week, very quiet, uneventful. We're gonna get done our tasks, check off our boxes, and move right along with the process. And bam, just like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until you get hit in the face. I feel like I'm always just getting hit in the
That's
face
us.
and licking my wounds, but finding a way to deal with the problem. So, I mean, I'm good. I'm good. It's exciting nonetheless. It makes for a great story. So, I'm just enjoying the journey.
I love it, man. And on this show, again, rather than getting into spreadsheets and nerding out over capital stacks, we're talking about our seller or debt and like all those fun trials and tribulations. We thought we should center an episode on design. So, without further ado, let's bring in our guest, Courtney Petrovich. Courtney, how you doing today?
Hey Adam, I'm doing awesome. Glad to be here with you and Micah. It's always a fun time to chat with you guys.
Amazing, amazing. And so look, we don't go back like years, although it feels like we're like friends forever.
For
We
sure.
met actually at was is the mastermind up in Banff, right? I think that's
Yep,
where
it was
we
bam.
first
Yeah,
connected. Okay.
Design for
So
Greatness retreat. Yep.
yep. So a couple months ago, and by the way, shout out to Adam Avinas, Puneeth, Joel. I mean, they put on a great event, and I feel like anyone who's going to conferences, mastermind, coaching sessions, summits, like there's just huge ROI in some of the questions and the content. But I always leave those things. It's the people. And again, we got a chance to hang out quite a bit in Banff, which was awesome. You know, kind of lunches and dinners and after hours stuff. So that was a ton of fun. And then, of course, Mike and I get under contract on a hotel. We're looking for a designer. We start kind of shopping out and talking with people. And then, I don't know, it was just very organic to not only reach out to you, but again, see if you might be interested in working with us on a project like this. So, but before we jump into our hotel and the project and all of that, maybe we can start with a little bit of just background and context and a little bit of your story, because again, you're not like a designer necessarily right out of the gates, but again, coming at this from like an investor perspective, which I think is super cool as well. So maybe I can just turn it over to you. Just tell a little bit of your story and kind of how you got to here today.
Yeah, thank you. So I have always loved design. I didn't know it necessarily. I just kind of grew up with a dad who built custom homes, and so I got to go around and pick out the finishes and just found that really fun. And my mom was a seamstress, so we would pick out fabrics that went together. And I'm not as good of a sewer, but I would help a little bit on the sewing side. But I loved picking out like what patterns went together and everything like that. So it's just sort of woven into my bones. And
Woven, nice.
yes, how about that? um, so and I really didn't do a lot with design. I went to school and got a master's degree in public health and kind of went into that world for a while. And finally in 2016 started investing in real estate. Started off in long-term rentals, which is a very different mindset than short-term rentals, where it's like spend as little as possible on this property. We're barely making a little bit per month, and we're really hoping for appreciation at the end of the day. So I was in long-term rentals from 2016 to 2023, and then started to research short-term rentals, started listening to the STR Secrets podcast, and just really educating myself. And I said, I think I can do better than I'm doing in long-term rentals. So we took the leap, sold a long-term rental, and did a lazy 1031 to purchase a short-term rental. And that was a 8-bedroom home across the country. And I was crazy enough to think I could design it. And so designed that. And we flew out to South Carolina for a week, did our own install, carrying heavy bed frames up a 3-story stacked home that was on
Man.
stilts. Thank God we have 2 handymen who helped us out. But that was really the start of my love for design, because I saw that process of starting something that didn't exist. It started as a vision in my head, getting it onto a computer and space planning software and images and things like that. And then the real part was getting it into real life and just seeing that become something from what was just a vision.
Mm.
And so from there, I just fell in love with design and started to designing for other short-term rental investors. Because again, being able to bring that investor mindset, like, hey, let's not just buy the most expensive coffee table because I think it's really pretty. Let's make strategic decisions on what's going to get you a return on your investment. So since then, I've been designing for others and super excited to be jumping into hotels with you guys now.
That's great. I just want to double back to the word woven. It's got to get you like 42 points on Scrabble. So
That's
that's
correct.
such a good word choice. But no, in all reality, I love that you're an investor first. And that's really something to appreciate because you're making decisions about what's going to get you the best ROI, what you're seeing that may look pretty but may not transfer best in photos, and it may not be durable or last for kind of high traffic areas, things like that. So if you could just take a small dive into, what's your thought process when you're deciding what type of curtains to use or what type of sheen on your paint. I mean, it's so many different kind of things
Mm.
you can delve into more than I'm able to speak to because this is definitely not my strong point. But if you could just kind of talk us through your thought process when you're making those decisions for people.
Yeah, so it's always finding the line between, obviously, as you start to get more into commercial grade items, things that are higher touch wares, it's going to start to cost more. But we have to forecast into the future and say, okay, maybe today this is going to cost 20% more, for example, but we know that it's going to last us 5 years for this use case instead of 1 year. So we sort of have to think long term, as investors, especially. I was sort of reflecting on the differences in short term rentals and what I'm learning here in the commercial space.
Mhm.
Everything is so amplified in the commercial space, whether it's budget. If I'm off by $100 per bedroom in a 4-bedroom house, that's a $400 difference. If I'm off by $100 in a 50-unit hotel, that's a big budgetary difference. And then same for the furnishings. It's just more amplified. Like we have to spend a little bit more to get that higher wear and have the longevity of items. Um, and then, you mentioned Micah paint. That's another thing that's pretty similar in STRs and commercial. We just have to be a little bit more cognizant of durability in commercial spaces. And so, we think about, okay, how can we touch up this paint? So that's a key deciding factor in the sheen that we're going to use because higher sheens are easier to clean, but they're harder to touch up. So we're constantly just working through this push-pull of, okay, what trade-offs are we making and what's the best decision for now and for the long run?
Yeah, I love that. And maybe talk a little bit about the difference between like a professional interior designer, somebody who's thinking through all of this and has, vendor contracts and advisors and like, again, I feel like you're very professional with how you approached us, how you pitched us, how you're thinking through these sorts of things as an investment. But there's probably a lot of people out there that are just DIY, like, that like, oh, I've got 5 Airbnbs already and they perform pretty well. So let me just kind of run the same play. So I'm going to go on Wayfair and Amazon and, kind of do this myself. Now, I think commercials may be a different game, but can you talk a little bit about, again, DIY versus like what does it bring to the table for people to work with a professional interior designer?
Yeah, it's so funny because I don't know about you guys, but when you see listing photos that are DIY, you can tell they're DIY. It's like, man, they really tried. They really did try. It's just not all the way there. So it comes down to the level of detail, that professional designers are bringing in. So we always start with coming up with a cohesive color palette. And when we first started talking about Page, I pitched like, hey, let's bring in a color palette from the local area. So from the stone and from the river, from Horseshoe Bend, and let's bring in the story of the area through our color palette, because I'm sure you guys are aware there's a lot of storytelling that happens in design, and it's really the language that we're using to tell the story of, in this case, Page, Arizona. So that's the starting point, is that cohesive color palette that we're going to carry, in this instance, throughout the hotel. Could be an STR if we're working with an STR, so that when guests see photos in these spaces, they all connect in a strategic way. I would say another big difference is having that design theme. So we, after spending time in Page and going to the history museum and just learning about different, not only geographic locations, but people who meant something to that place. And we landed on the name the Wesley for John Wesley Powell. It's weaving that theme in throughout the property, because if we put that in the lobby and guests check in and they see all this, John Wesley Powell merch and whatever, but we don't have that story carried through the amenity areas or into their rooms with a cohesive design theme, it's not going to feel intentional to them. It's not going to evoke moments of awe. Like, I heard a quote once and it said, "We don't remember days, we remember moments." And so we have such an opportunity in this space to provide our guests with meaningful moments. And when those are all connected in little ways, they're going to notice that and they're going to make memories around that. So I think that's one of the big things that differentiates a DIY from more of a professional design approach.
I love that. I really do. And, even up until this point, you have shown us that you are very good at doing that. And I wanted to give you a little bit more credit than you've already had, because I've seen the Pinterest board. I've seen the thought process. I've seen the Loom video of you walking through every single color and the reason you chose this color. You chose the blue because of the color of the lake. You chose the green because of the greenery in the area, or the browns because of the red rock that's in the distance. So every single color, every single piece of this design, I feel like you've very, very thoughtfully kind of came to a conclusion of why it would work best, even as far as like making some of the patterns a wave to mimic Antelope Canyon, or the upper Antelope. So I just wanted to hear more about when you start at a blank canvas and you say, I want to create a design that's going to fit into a certain community, a certain type of feel. Because really, I feel like what you're doing is you're creating a feeling and an experience for guests when they come onto the property. So what does it look like to start from a blank canvas? Do you immediately say, I want to make this like the best outdoor scenic place ever, or are you trying to pull things from different places to have it a full cohesive style like you were talking about before?
Yeah. Well, at first, I want to just appreciate that you guys had a vision going into it, and you really, I felt, cared so much about Paige and being a part of the community and the history. And so, I really appreciated that, and that's part of the reason why I wanted so badly to work with you guys, and I'm so excited to be here. And so that aligned with kind of my process on the design to start to get to know a community and the history and the surrounding area, and also the history of the building. So one thing I noticed right away when you guys sent me the listing of the hotel was that it was built in the 1950s. And so I immediately thought, we can't go super modern trying to be this like 5-star luxury resort. That's not going to honor the bones of the building and the history of the building. And so that's what made me think, let's pull in a mid-century modern design theme. And I also love that Page is, Mike, I believe you said it's one of the most drivable markets in the country. Is that right?
The state of Arizona is considered
Okay.
one of the most drivable in the country. That's correct.
Yes. And so I love that era, the 1950s, 60s, part of the 70s, was like the golden age of travel and driving and drive-ins. And so I just really felt like, yes, this is how we honor Page, by bringing in the natural landscape and the colors. And this is how we honor the history of this building that was built in the 1960s. We lean into that mid-century modern design theme. And so I've been sourcing based on that. And I'm just like getting so excited as I'm finding these really cool, like mid-century modern items to pull in, along with John Wesley Powell's story. So.
That's great. Maybe can we help people? Because again, this is like our first rodeo, getting into the hotel space. It's kind of your first time going from huge luxury Airbnbs now to a commercial grade property, 50 rooms. It's a lot to think through. I mean, naively, before we even got in here, I'm like, okay, could we model out like kind of a good, better, best? Like, what would $2,000 or $3,000 look like? What would $4,000 or $5,000 look like? And it seems like, I mean, to kind of do a nice baseline room, it's actually closer to like 6 grand or 7 grand or. So can you just talk a little bit about, I don't know, so what you're learning as you think about transitioning from designing for single family homes to designing in the commercial space and some of the cost implications? Because I think a lot of people listening to this, if, again, maybe you're under contract or you think this is, your next move, not getting a fifth or a 25th Airbnb, but like trying to get that economies of scale and all of the goodness that's in the commercial asset class. Like, what are you learning about this from the design and in particular the cost side of things?
Yeah. And so what you said, Adam, is completely true. I ran through a couple of weeks ago, built out a spreadsheet and started to source some commercial items just to see, is Adam's philosophy of can we do a $3,000 room accurate? And so I did find like even at kind of baseline, we really need 5 to 6 so that guests are comfortable and everything like that. And what also is really important that I'm learning is just the scale of operations and how much that matters. Because if you can save cleaners 5 minutes per room and extrapolate that by 50 rooms, that's a huge difference in your operational costs and your operational time and the staffing that you need. So even, tiny decisions like in short-term rentals, we almost always use typical bed frames with clearance underneath. So cleaners can vacuum under. And one thing that I learned from a mentor from the start was like, hey, use platform beds. Don't use anything aside from platform beds. You're going to reduce cleaners having to bend over, vacuum underneath. Guests aren't going to leave things under the beds. So it's just learning details like that and you think about, okay, 1 turn times 50 rooms times 5 minutes. Think about that over the course of a year and how much of an impact that's going to make. And so every decision that we're making on the design side, whether it's paint coloring, how to allocate different paint colors, dark on the bottom, light on the top, if people are going to be scuffing the walls, just every single decision needs to go through that filter of how is this going to impact operations in addition to how is this going to impact photos.
That is great. I'm so glad you shared that. I want to take a little minute to share a story about when we were all at the property. We walked every single unit, 50 units. We walked the outside. We talked to general contractors. We talked to the inspector. And then we all kind of we ate lunch and we went our separate ways. I took a nap because I was exhausted. But then we all met up again at later in the day, and I'm like, I don't know what just happened, but we need to kind of make a plan. And Courtney, she gets there and she says, I feel good about this. I still think that I can do this. And I was just so relieved to hear that, even with everything we just saw and, the budget clearly out the water, what we initially expected. She got back and said, I still think I can do this. I'm very confident that we can make this work. So I just want to talk a little bit about like budget constraints, and we all have a great idea and we all have a plan of what we want to do to make this place a masterpiece. But then reality sets in and numbers become real and you are constrained. No matter how big your budget is, you can only do so much. So I just want to talk through and hear what your thoughts are on just being able to work with our budget and kind of have that like push and pull style relationship, so we still overall accomplish our goal, but still stay under our budget.
Uh, and that's just another, item I mentioned earlier, that just everything is so amplified in the commercial space versus a single family home. And so budget is obviously very amplified and very important. And so the conversations that we're having right now in our planning is, okay, how much do we allocate to these amazing amenity spaces that we dreamed up? You know, we walked around the property and we're like, imagine sitting in a barrel sauna right here with this amazing view. And, you know, imagine we could have cornhole set up here and picnic tables and a food truck. And we were just dreaming. And then
Yeah.
we get home and we're back to the spreadsheet. So right now it's a push and pull, and I don't think we have that answer yet. What we've done so far is, you know, I've taken our key amenities that after visiting the property, we decided would be the most valuable to guests and to market and to the experience. And I've done research to kind of assign how much of an impact it would make on things like ADR, on guest experience, tie into our design theme. And then we made weighted scores. And I told you guys, this is relative. This is not exact. You know, I can't say this is going to be a $5 ADR difference, but we can look at the relativity of amenities versus one another. And so we're still in that phase of how much do we have to put towards these amenities versus how much do we want to put into guest rooms. I think we're going to come out probably with sort of a happy medium, right? Like we invest some into the pool area and the amenities. We know that guests love hot tubs. I mean, even just staying at a hotel on site, the hot tub was always full at my hotel. But we also know that guests need to be comfortable and in a room with working televisions and things like that. So I don't have that answer yet, what the perfect balance is going to be for us, but I do know that we're being very intentional and continuing to go back to the research, the data, and then our own, you know, knowledge of the guest experience, because all three of us have, we're all short-term rental owners and operators and have that experience to pull from as well. So, you know, I would love to say we're just putting in everything we want, but right now we're in that deciding phase. And it will be interesting to, once we start to have conversations with our general contractor, because they're going to help be a deciding factor. And, you know, hey, can you get discounts on lumber so we can do this outdoor dining platform or the space for yoga mats or things like that. So that's going to add a whole nother layer. And I think we'll be able to move forward better with decisions once we have them on board as well.
That makes sense. So this is not pre-planned or anything, and it's one of the things we are meant to talk about this week in like our weekly team call, just to stay aligned and share things as they move. But I'm thinking about this topic of like guest suite conversions, and again, I imagine that maybe I'm the referee on this one. I feel a little bit biased, but like I am team like knock down a wall and have like a double unit so you could have a cool living room, or it just gives you more possibilities rather than. So I got to believe that, Courtney, you might be on my side here with, if you got 50 square boxes, could you turn a couple of them into rectangles? But I know Micah's also curious, you know, looking at the numbers and going, wait, does it make sense? Does it math? Like, are we losing revenue by, you know, turning this from a 50 hotel unit into 48, even if some of them are super cool and amenitized, et cetera. So again, I know we're going to talk more about this live, but I would love just real time to maybe get some perspectives or reactions, kind of pro converting and creating kind of unique spaces on a property, and maybe what's the con side or the downside scenario of that. So maybe I'll go to Courtney first, and then Micah, give you a chance to. I know you got some thoughts on this one.
You know it.
Well, I hope it's okay that I say this, but it was so fun to watch you guys on site, because Adam was definitely like the grandiose dreamer and Mike is just like, oh my God, my wallet. And it was so fun to just witness that and to really see like the balance between you two and what a great partnership it makes. But to come back to your question, Adam, my thought process behind that is, I had previously asked you guys, you know, what's the max occupancy during super, super busy season? And correct me if I'm wrong, Micah, but I believe you said 90% occupancy is kind
About
of your
90.
max.
The data says 90%. There are nights where the hotel sells out and there's nowhere to sleep in the town of Page. So there is a possibility of a full sellout as well.
So, you know, my thought process is operating on the assumption that 90% of the nights, you're probably going to be at 90% occupancy or less. You can probably afford to lose a couple of rooms and not impact your occupancy and have those be nicer where we put up wallpaper and we have some more in-room amenities and things like that to be able to command a little bit, well, probably a significantly higher ADR. You might even attract a different guest profile than you wouldn't attract otherwise. That does make sense to me just along those lines of thinking. Um, I could be persuaded otherwise by data, but that's my initial gut reaction to sort of thinking through it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean to kind of follow up with what you're saying, you're right. And even on the nights that it sells out, unless we're selling out every single weekend where it really makes a big difference on that top and bottom line, then it's not too big of a deal. But just kind of, knee jerk reaction when we originally talked about it, my mindset was if we're going to use two rooms, we need to at least double the revenue to justify it. And this is just, looking at it from a spreadsheet and seeing, how much how much more money will we actually make by offering the suite versus a standard room for the guests. But this is where like creativity and like curation comes in, because this may not look different on the spreadsheet, but if we're able to attract a different type of guest avatar, or we now have another thing to market and put on our website as like a private suite that can sleep 4 or 6 or whatever the case is,
Mhm.
that's value in itself. So while it may not double the ADR, your occupancy over the year may go from 65 to 67, which across 50 rooms makes a significant difference. So I see both sides, but of course I'm going to be very black and white because my imagination is that of a 40-year-old man. It's not much. So so and I'm saying that to say I'm not imaginative at all. But I really lean on Courtney and Adam to kind of show me a new world when it comes to things like this and get out of the spreadsheets and more into the experience. So, yeah, that's kind of what I think about it. Adam, what are your thoughts as far as the suite? We know you love it. We know
Yeah,
that
look, look,
if it
look,
was your
look.
option.
Look, I think this is what's kind of fun, right? Where operations and spreadsheets meet like creativity and imagination, and it is through that creative tension that. So this is why I didn't want to do this myself, and this is why I'm in a mastermind and a mentorship, and I want to get around people that are doing this or other people that want to do this for the first time, and we're going to find out that yeah, maybe 8 out of 10 Atom ideas are good, but I don't know which two suck, and so being around people, being able to debate, to brainstorm, I'm just such a firm believer that that we can raise our collective intelligence. Right, 1 plus 1 plus 1 actually equals 5 if it's facilitated correctly. So I guess that's my belief is that look, I'm happy to debate and lose, but I will always have a point of view, and I'll always
For
try and
sure.
persuade. I'm a persuasive guy.
Yeah,
Um,
you got a few things that you're trying to sell me on right now. I'm trying
yeah,
to
well,
stand firm.
exactly. Well, Mr. Rooftop bar over here. You
Shh, shh.
see, you
Let's
could
not
get
talk
him
about that.
rolling too sometimes, just on a few things. But
No,
anyways, to come back to it, I think what hopefully is helpful for listeners is to go. There's 1,000 decisions that need to be made, probably every single week, and you can get really fatigued. And like even when we were inspecting the rooms, I got fatigued. Like I was like, okay, we've looked at 36 crappy rooms. Do I need let me guess what's in the 37th room? But actually, in retrospect, it's helpful, right? So again, having a diversity of people, of personalities, different perspectives, I think it's all super valuable. Yes, I am team pro like guest suite. Just thinking about like if my family traveled down there, I got a 6-year-old son. I'd love to be able to close a door. Like that's one of the things Airbnb and VRBO always market on is if you stay at a hotel room, your bedtime is your kid's bedtime. So again, we got 50 boxes that all look identical. I think you got some choices to make. And at least in our case, we've made some kind of high level ideas to go, okay, we think all of the rooms with double full beds, like that's a pretty 1960s idea. Let's turn those all into single kings. and just really decorate those nicely. All the standard ones that have queens, 2 queens in them, cool. It's got space, so let's support that same design. But I think we've also discussed about maybe there's a basic version and maybe there's a premium version. And then, by the way, we have the classic, manager suite, a 2-bed, 2-bath, facility. We also got 2 rooms where a wall's already knocked down, and we have the possibility on another. So these are just all options. And I guess depending on the layout of your hotel, I think it's an age-old question for hoteliers of how much of a single product do you want and how much diversity of product do you want. And look, there's probably pros and cons to all of it. I'm actually most excited to do some A/B testing. That kind of sounds nerdy, but I can't wait until we create a few rooms and then we find out, oh my God, like in this market, actually the king single room beds are outperforming the double queens or vice versa, right? So what's that premium in ADR that we would get with different room types? But anyways, yeah, maybe like leave it there. But I think I've got a strong perspective, but I believe to my core in the power of collaboration and again, kind of having different ideas kind of meet each other. But I don't know. I'll throw it back. Throw it back to you.
I mean, you're right. And these, like you said, these are thoughts that we have kind of day in and day out, not just about this one thing, but there's 1,000 things to make decisions on. And it could be the difference in a lot of money, or it couldn't make a big difference at all. But these are just conversations that you have to have. And it's not something I recommend doing by yourself. And with that being said, Courtney, I wanted to ask you, for someone who may be a DIY interior designer and maybe they don't want to buy a 12 or a 50 room boutique hotel. Maybe they want to buy a 12 or a 15 room boutique hotel, something that's a lot smaller. What would you say to Mr. or Mrs. DIY interior designer that wants to take down a boutique hotel and design it all by themselves?
I would laugh.
Good luck.
I think it's like anything. When you see a professionally done product, it looks very easy to replicate. And it's not. Micah, you mentioned all the millions of decisions. We've had conversations on which rooms do we keep bathtubs in versus do we keep showers in. There are 1,000,003 decisions. And the more that the person who's purchasing can find their zone of genius. I don't know if that's underwriting for some people, if that's building relationships, if that's raising capital. But if you're doing all those things, you are not going to have, even if you had the design eye, you're not going to have the time and the dedication to really pull off the design side, because I see everything that you guys are doing. I've seen little glimpses of all the balls that you are juggling right now. And I'm like, I can't imagine them trying to select tile and, throw pillows. And so I hate to say it, but I would just say probably find someone that you trust, a designer that you resonate with. Adam and I talked briefly before this about some advice that we got from his mentor to think about, these crazy things are going to come up in this hotel process and the install process and the design process. And like, who do you want to have on your side? Who do you want to have those hard conversations with? And so I would just say, find that person who you trust their professional abilities, who you can rely on as a person, and navigate these scenarios with, and go with that and stick to whatever your zone of genius is. So
that's such a good answer. And honestly, we went out. We talked to 4 or 5 different shops, very, very talented designers out in this space. And I think as the years roll forward, there's going to be even more, right? Just as there are operators moving from the short-term rental space into boutique hotels, I think that same transition is going to happen and echo behind the scenes for designers, right? So I think, again, Courtney, you represent kind of maybe the not the first person to ever do this, but like there's a wave of interior designers coming from STR spaces to the commercial. So again, I think it's just fabulous what you're doing. We fell in love with you. Again, you've got professional abilities, how you communicated all of this. But again, when we were looking at lots of different people, it wasn't necessarily price based; it was relationship based. So exactly the advice that you're giving, just as a general partner, making decisions about who to bring on the team, I think relationships and credibility matter a ton. So we're super excited to have you on the project. Excited to see the transformation of this beautiful building. Well, it may be an ugly building today, but we want to make it beautiful. So, anyways, it's a pleasure to get to work with you on this. I realize we're close to the witching hour here, but yeah, let me maybe open it up. Closing remarks, ideas, things that we got to get onto this podcast. Certainly, we can have you back in the future to share more of the process as we go. But anything else that you'd like to leave listeners with as we kind of explore this space of interior design and how it maybe compares and contrasts from short-term rentals to hotels?
The last thing that I would say, and that's been, so meaningful to me, is just the large impact that we're going to have on guests traveling, families that are going to create memories, and even solo travelers who are going to get to see this incredibly beautiful place in the country through a new lens, through the way that we are honoring Paige's history and bringing in the local community. And so I think just finding, I guess, legacy would be a way to say it. Like, we're carrying in John Wesley Powell's legacy, the legacy of Paige, of the building. And so I just think the more that we can weave in legacy and meaning into projects like this, the financial results are going to follow that, because people will feel that.
Love that.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, I think a great conversation here for today. We can stick a pin in it or stick a needle in it, as your mom might do. But we've woven a beautiful episode here today. So thank you, Courtney, for joining us, Micah, as always. And thank you, the listeners, for supporting us. Again, if you've got ideas for topics, for guests, things that you want to know, our DMs are open. Hit us up. And again, if you're thinking about getting into the boutique hotel space, while this is an unofficial podcast, again, huge fans for Short-Term Rental Secrets, Mike Sjogren's outfit, and of course, the Boutique Hotel Secrets, where we get to work with Joel, Rashmi, Isaac, and so many other talented advisors. So again, please consider checking that out to learn more. And until next time, have a great day. And that's the pod.